yeah, so straight away to dive in, how does someone go from Texol to Piano Man, from importing biometric software, I think you said, to becoming a jazz cue?
Yeah. No, so there is no direct correlation. It's two different sort of phases of life. Um, Music was always important for me, as an observer, then as a musician. But I had taken a decision quite early on in life that perhaps the kind of music that I want to play is not commercially viable, in the
Yeah,
sense that I'd rather not compromise what I want to do. But if I can't make a living off it, then I can, keep doing it on the side. And
yeah,
also come from a progressive traditional family, in the sense that my folks are uh, definitely very progressive, but there is that pull towards, okay, stability, and
yeah,
make sure that you are sort of secure for the future. So for them also it was interesting, because at one point through my early life, they would keep telling me, just do your MBA, make sure you're stable. At the other point, they still did encourage me when I did absolutely nothing, that was recommended. So
right.
it was very interesting. I always had the support that I needed and I wanted. I'm very fortunate about that, as well as grounding. So, they always told me that, make sure that you're always grounded. And so that's what happened. So that's why I started doing all these weird things that I did in my early years, from my late school years, when I started working with, like, web design companies. Macromedia Flash 1 was out. Yeah, you might be too young. You might be too young for
No, no,
that.
no, I've only heard about
Yeah,
it.
because now, yeah, Flash is now zoned out. Like, it's,
Yeah,
your
we
browser
get
says it does not
notifications saying,
support Flash anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I'm
Yeah,
talking about when it came in, and it was holy shit, and we got these softwares, and we were like creating like basic animations and synchronizing. Like, Fruity Loops is still big. At that time, we used to use Fruity Loops
yeah,
to sort of sequence sound for it. Um, and yeah, I remember those days, man. Like, there was a company that I used to make a couple of these sort of, soundscapes for websites when I was in school. And then after school, I went straight into, engineering, which a lot of people assume that, engineering was a misstep, since I do something completely
yeah,
different now. But I think it was one of the most valuable aspects of my education, simply because engineering is also about a mindset. It's a way of approaching a problem. It's a way of approaching solutions. And I'm very happy that I did that, because I appreciate that methodology, and I
mhm,
follow it always. And it's always good to have an inquisitive and curious mind. Even in even today, like, if there's a aspect of work that I don't have any knowledge about, I will actually take the time out and spend a couple of nights sort of researching it, and then come back and raise questions or take decisions, because I like to be informed at the very least. So yeah, so the transition happened. Texol was something I set up when I was in end of school college, just trying to figure out shit to do, because I just loved being active and doing things. And from there to F&B was F&B was, it happened. Like, if you've seen my older interviews, you know that
yeah,
some very dear friends, even now in Bhutan, who wanted to enter the F&B space in India, and they asked me to partner with them, and that's how I actually entered the space, with no prior knowledge, never having stepped into a kitchen before, and yeah,
so,
and I took it on
so,
like I take on everything in life.
so at some level, having done so many things actually gave you an idea as to what not to do and what to do and what your interest actually lies in. Is it like that? Or is it just that you derived
Mm,
solutions of all the things that you did and try to
yeah,
implement
it's
them?
it's the latter. It's the latter. Every experience adds to the person that you are, right? We are the sum of our
Yeah, so,
experiences,
yeah,
and it's not like, um, I still don't know what to do and what not to do. I make giant mistakes in life in general, and I'm okay with that. I think what all the experiences taught me is that it's okay to make a mistake. What's important is that you quantify your mistake. Learning from your mistake is obvious. That's one thing. But before you go into something, like, I started being very careful when I take a risk.
mm-hmm.
Now with almost 20 years of almost 20 years of work behind me.
Wow.
Now when I take a risk, I quantify it. I say, all right, these are the possible outcomes, and this is what I stand to lose. Worst case scenario, this is what I stand to lose or win. Moderate scenario, and this is the best case win. And that way, what happens is that there are no surprises. You can stabilize your efforts to ensure that you as an organization survive, and then it makes it easier to take decisions. And that's something that's an operationalization of sort of risk taking that it's I think one of the most important learnings that I've had over the last decade.
So just because we're talking about risk taking and how you've moved forward in these 20 years, so I know you've spoken about this before, but in general, in just a gist, how would you say the three different Piano Man spaces over the years, like the Vasant Vihar one initially, which was slightly different, and then the Safdarjung one, which for us and an entire other generation has a very, very sentimental value, and now the Gurgaon one. What is, in your mind, what is the different value the three of them hold to you?
So again, they're operationally completely different, but ideologically they're the same thing, right? It's the same purpose behind each of the properties. It's the same approach to what we're trying to do in terms of creating a space for exposure, creating a safe space for artists, creating an environment that is conducive to the conversation of art. And trying to figure out or identify ways to finance the creation of art, right? Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, like you mentioned, in the beginning of our conversation, it's very difficult in all over the world, and especially in this country, to create commercial value from something that's especially outside Bollywood in this country. So our questions are the same. Most of the venues that have popped up in this country have been backed by investors or sponsors, and I think that is a very short-term way of approaching a product.
I was actually going to come to that.
You can't count on investors. You can't.
How these spaces are, the people who are beginning these spaces, how they should approach it, because there are so many that begin and just shut down. So
but this is the reason, right? They shut down because of they run out of cash. They run out of money to run the space, and it's not been an easy ride. Still not an easy ride for us. In fact, 1920 was our first incredible year. Like, we actually started making big sort of headways into paying back our debt, and then welcome to 2020. It just eroded all of that in one shot. But at least it showed us that 10 years of work later, or 8 years of work later, we reached a space where, it took 8 years to make the company or bring the company to where we want it to be. That doesn't mean that the previous 8 years were a disaster. It's a continuous and very linear climb. It's not an exponential climb, right? And that linearity is preferred to the exponential because the linearity means that at every step we are laying down a substrate. We are laying down an infrastructure. We are laying down systems and processes to support the organization. And this comes from a very different space than art. And this is what has been the toughest thing for me to sort of learn, simply because I tend to be how do I put it? I tend to want to focus on, okay, forget everything else. Money doesn't matter. Let's focus on art. But what happens over there is that money does matter, because you can't build a structure without the stability. And that comes back to where we started at this point. Whenever somebody is building an organization that is trying to promote anything, and especially when it's trying to promote the arts, you got to identify what is going to source the financing of that, right? And a lot of people end up depending on sponsorships and investments. And for me, sponsorships and investments are like the icing on the cake.
Right.
You have to be a viable entity before that. Because if you're depending on a sponsorship or an investment to run a property, whether the property is a festival, whether the property is a venue, whatever it is, it becomes incredibly fickle. It becomes incredibly fickle, because right now nobody's willing to put in money into this industry. Right. And these cyclical sort of problems will keep happening, like 2008-9, the housing downturn happened. A lot of wealth was eroded from the market. Before that, the dot-com burst happened. A lot of wealth was eroded from the market. Now, Corona is happening, possibly one of the largest wealth erosions in the last 100 years. So things will keep happening. Well, not the last 100 years, I'm assuming. The World War was more significant, but yeah, you know.
Yeah.
But you get my point, right? So these sort of cyclical issues will keep happening, and that is life, right? Humanity will create a drama if there's no drama, because we get bored very easily.
Yeah.
So and I, you know, and what's happening today isn't like, I mean, it's not something trivial. It's not something that can be disregarded. It's affecting millions and millions of people all over the world. We're all scared, right? Fear is governing our
Yeah.
lives right now. But it's a reality of the situation. And in these realities, we often find that we lose support from the people who claim to be like, you know, we're behind you. We love the arts. And
Yeah.
we're seeing that as well, because we had a few partners, you know, some of them putting in a significant amount of money that we would repay over. It was like, you know, like low interest debt that we picked up
Mhm.
based on our model. And, you know, they're unwilling to put in the money today. And I don't entirely blame them, because I understand the fear, right?
Right.
So now for me, the question is, am I stable enough to survive? And that's why. So we started operations with alcohol in September itself, just
Mhm.
about a month before now. But 9th of September in Delhi, and I think 11th in Gurgaon or 13th in Gurgaon. It took us a few more days
Yeah.
to get the license and sort it out. And we're seeing a very, again, gradual and linear uptick, right?
Mhm.
And through all of it, our focus is, hey man, we gotta ensure safety is a paramount issue, not because the government said so, but because we want our teams to be safe, we want our artists to be safe, and we want our guests to be safe, right? There are
Yeah.
three basic factors. And at the end of the day, when you're heading out of your house, no matter what anyone says, there is a risk factor, right? There's a risk factor, even if there is no corona in the world, there's still a risk factor. There can be an accident, there
Yeah.
can be a this, there can be a that. So so a lot of our regulars, you know, people who we see multiple times a week through the years, are not stepping out and they're not coming in. And I completely understand and respect that, because the advantage of running a sort of culturally led space is that most of your diehard patronage is people who are well read, well versed,
Of course.
who take
Yeah.
out the time to keep themselves informed. And in a situation like we have today, the more informed you are, the more scared you are. So,
That's true. Exactly. Yeah. So,
yeah. So,
so
yeah.
no. So, given like just talking about being scared, do you think governmentally, policy-wise, because see, music and art, musicians and artists, unlike the plastic arts side, they're not. Their work is not tangible in the sense that you cannot put a value to it, right? So, policy-wise, there is no sector under which they fall. So, and there is no census that puts out all the artists separately, or has any social security for them, or any of those things. So do you think that will help in the overall building of the culture of such establishments, as well as obviously help the artists vis-a-vis their
So
daily wages?
this is an incredibly important conversation, and this country doesn't have this conversation.
Yeah.
Even in India, you got organizations like Spick McKay, you've got some sort of CSR support, something, but it's also limited to a very. So, firstly, the definition of Indian music in India is historical Indian music,
Yeah.
and my definition of Indian music is music played by Indian musicians,
Right.
whatever it be, right? Uh, and secondly, in the kind of economic structure that we have built over the last century, um, we value the wrong things. We value materialism and not happiness. And the minute that materialism is important over happiness, art will become, because art is linked to this and money is linked to this,
Yeah.
right? So this is a sort of it's a seesaw. You can
Yeah.
either be here or you can be here, and I think it requires another level of evolution of sort of human capability. And I don't mean like telekinesis. I just mean that we
Yeah.
need to
Empathy.
evolve past empathy, man. That's the key word. Empathy is the most important and the most absent term today, right?
Yeah.
The minute empathy becomes the most critical thing that's taught to children, and they grow up to be stable, well-adjusted human beings who care about the people around them, then the world can start changing a little bit. So firstly, that's the issue. Like we are living in a world which is based on a, if you think about it, slightly illogical structure.
Right,
We're
yeah.
focusing on things which are,
Not slightly.
at the end of the day, yeah. I'd be so much happier sitting and reading a book than sort of, I don't know, like driving a Rolls Royce. If I had a Rolls Royce, I'd be so stressed out. Yeah, dent lag jayega. And my entire journey on the road, we will be stressed, we'll be worried about ispe dent lag jayega. I was so sad. I had a Polo for 10 years, but it was diesel, and I was so sad when I had to give it away because 10 years diesel, Delhi, not allowed.
Yeah,
मैं उसको आराम से और 20 साल और चला लेता. So and for me that was like, when I bought it was my first car that I bought, and I was just like, life is complete.
Amazing. Yeah.
I don't need anything more. So it's little things like that, right? And that's also, if the weather was great in the city, cycling would be the shit to do. It's just that our priorities are so skewed
Right.
that remember that article in the beginning of the lockdown from Singapore? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. I do. Yeah.
The most useless professions in the world.
Yeah.
And right on top was artists and musicians.
Yeah.
So it's just that, man. You turn around to the same people and say, hey, man, why don't you turn yourself off from the consumption of media?
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the value that you put on art. Even TikTok is, man, however trivial or insane some of us think that, TikTok shorts were.
It was a major part.
That is also, it's an expression of art, man. It allowed people with no connect to the world to suddenly have a space to, and it wasn't the kind of thing that I personally enjoyed mostly. Like a lot of stuff was kind of irritating for me, but not for millions of people. And more than enjoying it, it was something that academically for me, it was such an interesting study, just to see how people utilize that platform to express themselves.
So in fact, we did. We actually did an article on the Indian diaspora and TikTok and how it has influenced Indian culture and what kind of people it looks at and tries to empower also at some level. But yeah.
I'll read that. Please send that link to me. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's the thing, right? Like we have to sort of, until we understand the significance of these outputs, until we understand the significance of art and the effect that it has on our emotional state, on our physical state, that seesaw can't be corrected. And till the seesaw can't be corrected,
but you think the seesaw can be
corrected? We'll continue to face this issue
with proper policy implementations, and if those are because you are such a seminal figure in organizing an entire culture in Delhi, and almost inspiring other people across the country to be able to do similar things. If you were given the power to create a policy, what would it look like?
Okay, so there are two things that I would approach. The first is at a quick fix, and the quick fix is, it would be at the policy level. And the policy level, in fact, Akshara Theatre has just started a campaign. I read it yesterday only, where they're asking for specific sort of policy amendments. And I agree with pretty much everything that they put on there. I have things to add to that as well. But in a very simple way, the first is a artist registry. Some place that an artist can be recognized as an artist, so that when you start, you recognize businessmen, you have DIN numbers for directors of companies. There needs to be an artist identification number. The minute that comes in, then there needs to be a structure and a system in place to help categorize artists in terms of what they do, and help different support systems for each of these verticals, right? So whether it is across Europe and the US, one of the reasons why I say Western classical music is alive, because unfortunately, because of the complexity of the music and because of the reputation that is garnered over the last 50 years, people think that Western classical music is it's so tedious, but it's actually some of the most incredibly beautiful music. Yeah. So now, but the reason why it survives in many parts of the world is state support and third-party grant support. A lot of the international bands that have come and played at piano band, out of the 350 bands that have come over the last, couple of years, a lot of them have come through grants. We can't afford to fly them now. International flights, are you kidding? Like if I spend money on a band flying in from the US, I'm done. My month's budget is over.
Yeah.
Right? So we've got to create that infrastructure, and and the only way to empower third-party organizations, the Indian government policy implementation means a long conversation and a long time. But what's easy is very strong CSR push. So the government can say that, all right, you put, say, I think it's 2% of revenue is supposed to go to CSR. I don't remember the exact numbers. You push that up to a 7 or an 8%, and you expand the definition of activities that can be considered under CSR. And you put safeguards and watchdogs to ensure that that money isn't being sort of misused. That's a very simple way to immensely boost the industry. Because when you talk about large turnover, like look at NCPA, man. What a phenomenal! It's literally run by Tata CSR money, if I'm not mistaken. This can be corroborated and corrected. Yeah, and just that one, though it's one of the biggest organizations in this country, but just that one company is able to create one of the best infrastructures in the country and has access to bringing in world-class programming simply because that is the actual amount of money available. The average Indian is not earning a lot of money, but the 1 percentile is turning some serious coin. And if a decent amount of the money, if a respectably small amount of that money, it doesn't have to be like an obnoxiously large person. A single % increase from 2 to 3 is a 50% increase, which can significantly make an impact to what's happening in this country. And beyond that, for what Teamworks is doing, what other organizations are doing, I unfortunately haven't had the time to go through the details of some of these artist grants, but I'd actually be very curious to know what their methodology of dispersing these grants is, because I haven't seen much data out on that. And that's what happened. Zomato started this support the restaurant thing, and they collected money. And my question was the same. I said, what is your methodology? Who takes the decision, and how are you? Because if you're collecting money as a non-profit in that situation, you've got to be crystal clear about how you're dispersing the money. You've got to make sure that the artists who need it get. And these are very complex conversations. How do you identify an artist who needs it? I mean, I interact with hundreds of artists at any point of time. I know so many artists who need it. My suggestion to organizations like this is encourage artists to set up micro patronage accounts like Patreon and put in support in those accounts. That's one way to do it. But yes, so that the first problem for the first task, the short fix is a compliance fix. Then create a separate category for the people who are promoting arts organizations. For example, we fall under a F&B space, right? But ideologically and through action, our priority lies with the execution of art. But there is no recognition of that as a category in the options available to us. Because if we take a license as a theater, then we can't sell F&B, which is what gives us our revenue. And if we take a license as F&B, then we are categorized into a group of products which we aren't. Right? F&B is very important to us. We've got a phenomenal team behind it because quality is important to us.
Of course.
But that doesn't mean that, that's the only thing that we do. And similarly, when we talk about these aggregators, by aggregators, I mean the Zomatos and Swiggies and Dineouts and the lot, they are structured for a specific product, which is an F&B product. So when we jump into I have a lot of friction with all of these organizations because they don't recognize me as a product that I am. They want to categorize me as a product that they understand. And it's not their fault at the end of the day, right? But it's all led by government classification because that's what people will follow. So anyway, that's a long answer to the first part of that question. The second part of the question stems down to what you mentioned earlier, empathy. The only way that we can actually start fixing the problem at a very, very organic level is for people to be brought up with the right kind of education. Something that's based in fact and science and empathy. right?
Yeah.
So that's a much bigger biscuit to bite. But
Of
until
course.
we have global education reform, this world will not improve. It won't. And the sad part is the minute that that happens, and we have generation after generation that's focused on reality and not nonsense. How fast humanity will sort of rise? It's insane.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, to move on to some of the more happier aspects of the art world and music. You mentioned you had over now 300 artists come and perform. So, what is your like? I'm very very curious myself as a huge
No,
fan
no,
of jazz.
300 international artists.
International artists, yeah, international artists.
Yeah.
What
And many more Indian artists.
Of course, yeah. So, what has your interaction been with some of these legends that you've had, like Chick Corea, Jojo Mayer? I mean, all of these people, like they're just like gods, right? So, like, I'm sure, like those interactions. I mean,
Man,
I'm
what the
leading to a
beautiful thing
story.
is, yeah,
I'm
they're the
leading to
best
a
of
story
humanity,
I don't know
honestly.
about, but yeah.
Yeah. No, so I'll tell you, they're anything but gods. And that's the beautiful thing, right? They literally show you how human and how kind they are. Like, let me give you the Chick Corea example. What's
Yeah,
Chick's age? Late 70s, if I'm not mistaken, right now?
yeah, around, yeah,
Must be what, 78, 79, 76,
yeah,
78.
around
So
that
when he
only,
came in
yeah.
2 years ago, 2018, so still second half of the 70s.
Yeah,
The entire conversation with Chick was really interesting. So basically, he was supposed to play Surfort, and some stuff happened, and that show got
yeah,
canned. I requested, because I was a part of that conversation, simply helping out in, spreading the word. Um, OML was leading the charge on this, Insider, sorry. And, uh, so I asked, I said, will Chick play a small club? And the reply was, let us find out. And then the immediate reply was no. So I wrote a little mail, the management, Chick's management and all, we were all looped in a mail, and I put a mail
yeah,
out saying that, it's a crime for him to come to Delhi and sit in a hotel room and leave, right?
yeah,
And Chick, from what I observed, when he's touring, when he's traveling to different countries, he actually sits and works the whole day. Like he's in his room, he's got like instruments there, he's sort of practicing, working, creating. And you can see, even now through the lockdown, he's been very active with online education. So, mail went out. There was a reply, call me and his phone number. And, when this entire thing happened, I was actually in Israel. The Israeli embassy had taken a couple of us to, on an arts and sort of culture junket to Israel, which was another
okay,
phenomenal experience. And I
yeah,
sent out this mail when I was there, and I came back. I was there for about 5 days. And on my last day, I think I sent this out. And I came back to Delhi and I'm sleeping, and I get up at 8 in the morning, which is about an hour earlier than I usually get up. And I have a mail in my inbox from Chick Corea, which has his phone number. And I'm like, holy shit. So I just sat up and I called him. And I'm very used to the. Fortunately, in my years of working, through my engineering years and before I got to the F&B business, I was also doing a lot of international trading of different, sending generators to some countries, sending pants to some kind of weird stuff I've done. And I got used to being able to just get up at like 4 in the morning because I get a call and just good evening, without any sleepy lag. So I just called him up and I'm like, hi sir, this is Arjun Gupta from the Piano Man. I got your mail. And we proceeded to have like a 45-minute long conversation in which we disagreed about a lot of things, man. We disagreed about the relationship between an artist and an audience. Because I said that, in this country, like it becomes a venue's responsibility to sort of create the right kind of space. And Chick
yeah,
came more from the perspective of the artist has to connect with the audience. And so, but it was a great conversation. We spoke about a bunch of things. And when it ended, I put the phone down. I was like, boss, ye to nahi aayega. But like just a couple of minutes later, he shot out a mail to everyone saying, let's do it. And that's when we sort of sprung into action. And for us at the venue, it was really interesting because you've obviously heard the stories about how we had to get the piano in and all that.
yeah,
It was amazing. But the thing that I want to tell you about this is when he actually came to the venue, So I had said something very simple. I said, listen, the stage is yours. We'll take care of all the organization that's required. You want to play one song, you play one song. You want to play another. So that's our policy with all artists. If you're uncomfortable on stage, get off the stage.
Yeah.
Right? Don't worry. It's not going to affect your relationship with the venue. At the end of the day, you have to feel that you want to be on stage. And that's why we put in so much effort into taking care of the artists from the minute they walk into the club. Same thing with Chick, he came and there was a full menu plan that came because he's very particular about his diet. He doesn't eat spices. He doesn't eat like salt. He doesn't eat sugar. So we prepared everything that he had sent, and we also prepared a bunch of stuff that we wanted him to try following his sort of dietary restrictions. We're like, sir, you've come all the way here. We don't want you to eat stuff that you eat every day. We want you to try something, And he was a good human being, man. He spoke kindly, no airs, no ego, eye-to-eye contact. He performed almost a little over 2 hours, by the way. And then after he finished his performance, he met every single person, he was sitting in the green room, and just because I didn't want there to be like a stampede, so we took people in for 5-6 people at a time, and everyone, man, like every single person that.
This is the story. So I live close to Safdarjung only. I'm not telling where because once we publish this, I don't want people coming around, the house. But and I studied in Ashoka University, so it's in Sonipat. So I used to take the Horsecraft metro directly to Jahangirpuri, and then we used to have a shuttle there, and that shuttle would take us to campus. So it was about 7:30 in the evening or something, and I take this metro, and I'm on my way, and I've reached Delhi University. I've reached Vishwavidyalaya station, and Sayan has texted me saying that Sayan Sinha has texted me that. भाई सब कुछ छोड़ के piano man आजा. So I mean, I have this kind of relationship with him where I trust him quite a lot. So at that moment when the doors of the
from Vishwavidyalaya.
No, so I just got out. Okay, I just got out and I called him. I said, "Kya ho raha hai?" So he said, "Chick Corea is performing at Piano Man." So I said, "No way, he's performing at Piano Man right now." Like I would have known. I follow their. I look at their.
No, we didn't publish the gig. Yeah.
Exactly. So he's like, "No, he's performing. Aja." So I was like, "Aise kaise aa jaun?" So he's like, he sent me your number and he said, "Ask him." So I said, the gig is in like half an hour. He'll be sitting with Chick Corea. What will I ask him? Like he's not going to reply to some WhatsApp from an unknown number right now. So at that point, I have written to you saying that Sayan has told me this is happening. I'm a huge jazz fan. This, that, and the other. Can I come? And I waited on the platform for 15 minutes and I got really sad. I was like, this is not going to happen. Like you said with him, that ye nahi hone wala. I texted Sayan saying ye nahi hone wala. It doesn't make sense for me to come back from Vishwavidyalaya and then find out I can't enter the space. So then I got back into the metro and I reached Jahangirpuri. And underground wahan pe signal nahi aata hai, but when I reach Jahangirpuri, I get a text reply from you saying, Aja. That's it. You just wrote one word saying, come. And I had my suitcase and everything with me. I told my friends there at the shuttle service, I told them, you take it to campus with you. I'm going back. So I took a cab. I rushed back. I missed the first song, but I was there through the gig after that.
Amazing,
and I got to meet him afterwards. No, but it was just amazing to me. And that day was just like, after I met him, I mean, I was always a jazz fan, but after I met him, and I spoke to him, and that night, I'm sure I cried that night when he was playing. Like it was like the level of silence in the whole place, and just the aura that he created.
Yeah. It was
like slightly.
So that's why there's a reason why we didn't advertise that show, because A, we didn't want to stampede, and B, we sent out a message to. So basically, what happened? The people who had booked tickets to watch him in Sirifo, so Insider took all the seating in the club. And we said, that was our sort of trade with them. And they sent out a message, first come, first serve seating for the people who bought tickets.
Yeah.
And they refunded the tickets. It was a free show for everyone. And sorry. Calling me about, because we are finishing off the programming for October. I call him back. So, so I requested Insider, I said, seating is all yours. Standing space up for musicians only. Because you can't have Chick playing and no musicians in the house.
Yeah.
Right? So then I put out a message to a couple of, the musicians that I'm in, regular contact with, just saying that Chick is playing turn up, which is why a few people knew that it's happening.
Yeah.
But we didn't advertise or publicize it because otherwise there would have been a stampede, man.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
no,
so
but
it
also
was just
Sayan just texted me because he knows how deeply I'm into this whole like world. He's like, this guy can't miss this.
amazing.
He'll kill me if he finds out.
Yeah.
So every time such a thing happens, I just have to be there, and I
Oh,
made
that's
it. And
amazing.
all
Thank you.
thanks to you. But yeah, no. So I actually made an interesting observation, and it actually made me respect you a lot initially as a person, which is that first time when I came, you do this thing when you make an announcement where you tell the audience that when the artist is performing, it's best we be a little bit respectful to the music and not, cause a ruckus, and try to appreciate the music in the way it is, which is such an important message, I feel. And again, that goes back to the empathy discussion we were having. But what are some of the basic things that you feel like yeah, someone should not have to tell someone, that this is something basic that you expect from your audience. I mean, obviously.
So let me correct you there.
Okay.
Let's not make an assumption that you don't need to tell people. Let's not grudge people their environment and their conditioning, right?
Yeah.
So, and I always say this, I never feel, I don't feel bad if people are not used to focusing on a musician performing in a certain way.
Of course.
I feel bad that their environment has conditioned them in that manner. So that's why whenever I do this, I never do it from a space of anger or disrespect or frustration.
Yeah.
That's why I can do it night after night for 5 years and going.
Yeah.
It's an earnest, sincere request that give it a chance. Just give it a chance to observe something from somebody else's perspective, in this case, the musician, the artist's perspective, and take a subjective decision on whether that made a difference or an impact to you. If it didn't, then it's fine. Like, it doesn't matter. If that's not how you want to consume music, who am I to tell you? These are our subjective decisions. But at least give it a chance first, and then make the subjective decision.
I mean, it gave me a lot of happiness personally, because I just feel jazz is a kind of music in itself. And I'm trained in Hindustani classical, but I love jazz in itself. But so in both of these kinds of music, I feel, and we've had this discussion before also, is that I feel there is some level of patience which is also required from the audience to be able to understand it and grasp it. And the moment you do, it's just some other level of connect. But that initial patience is required, I feel. So when you say that, I feel that really people end up, by the end of the night, everyone is singing and dancing, usually almost every time I have been there, because I feel those kinds of music lend themselves to that personal level of emotional connect if it is engaged with properly, so that is what I mean drove me towards that line that you say usually before the show.
So that's why the silent song also started, right? It was to create a small moment of pure understanding. Okay, for a few minutes, for 5 minutes, there's nothing else in the world except what's coming off the stage. And that's something that's really helped us sort of shape the culture of the space. It kind of became like people would come. Right now, we're not doing the silent song because there's small audiences and they're anyway silent. So I don't want to sort of disrespect them by saying, hey, shut up, when they're already listening. It makes no sense. But, the entire purpose of the silent song, a lot of people ask me, like some of our regulars who are coming, say, why aren't you doing the silent song? I said, yeah, you sat through the whole first set. How much noise did you hear in the audience? You're right, nobody. So the people who are coming today are also starved for, and that's the beautiful thing, people who would not normally sit quietly and listen to music are starved for the art. So today they're coming true. And like, if we have 15 people in the club, there's pin drop silence and those 15 people are listening. It's amazing. And it's sad that it took us Corona to get there, but it's also, I'm happy that, people are, at least the people who are coming. Also, it's also a disproportionate equivalence, because the people who are coming to us are specifically coming for the art. So, they will be.
But also talking about.
But at the same time,
No, please go ahead.
No, at the same time, a lot of our customers nowadays, or a lot of the patrons that are coming in, I always use those two words differently. There are different meanings behind them. For me, a patron is somebody who converts from a customer to somebody who respects and understands our ideology and supports it, not only financially, but emotionally or whatever, something that they resonate with. A lot of the people that are coming in today are new discoveries.
Yeah.
Because a lot of, like I mentioned, a lot of our usual customer base is still sort of in home and not moving out.
Mhm.
And it's great. Like, it's interesting because people are responding to it quite beautifully, and our environment and our space, and that's important. That's what
Yeah.
matters.
So you mentioned that you'd rather read a book than own a Rolls Royce, but it is well known that you have the Rolls Royce of grand piano collection.
Pianos. Yeah, but
uh, no,
I tell you
so
where
I
that
just
started.
know about them. Yeah,
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 I
I
tell
just
you where
want to
that
know.
started. Yeah. So the first piano I ever got. So I'll tell you my entire keyboard journey. I've never sort of
Yeah,
related the entire thing. Uh, Growing up, Casio,
yeah.
as wide as my face is now, and and I
No, so
literally
that is
radio पे कोई हिंदी ट्यून बज रहा है, मैं बजा रहा हूँ. Literally that kind of shit. Like just playing little
yeah.
melodic lines. Then my grandmother got me a Yamaha, I think QSR series back in the day. Those 15,000-20,000 rupees 61 key keyboards. That's what I started learning on from a gentleman named Muhammad Arshad. So John Thompson's and whatever else, the basic sort of piano for adults sort of thing. Though I was 14, 15, 16, 14, 15 at that time. Then there were some German expats who were leaving India, and they were selling a Korg Concert 7100. It's a full-size digital piano, weighted keys, and I think they were selling it for the princely sum of 20,000 rupees or something.
Amazing.
They sold us the stool for 10,000 rupees because it was a beautiful, like, I still have that stool, but the keyboard was 20 grand. And my dad was like, yeah, the stool is very beautiful. And my father is actually the reason I have a love for art. He's never had the opportunity to be an artist because he's had, work to run the family, whatever else. But he has an artistic soul like no other. And his ear is better than mine. Like he hears things even I can't hear. So he's been the guy who, like, if he had 10 rupees, he would be willing to spend 9 rupees on getting me an instrument. Because we also, like, we're standard, like, middle class family growing up, never had want for anything because like I said, my folks are incredible. But also never having the money to go and buy like a Fazioli concert
Yeah.
band for like 2.5 crores. So we got that concert 7100, which I learned on for many years. It had a very stiff action. So I developed a technique of banging the keys literally, which I still, when I'm playing subconsciously, I go back into it. I'm just used to playing hard because of that keyboard. Because I played on it for 10 years. In fact, that keyboard then went to a lot of other people. It's gone through 7, 8 hands. So that's the digital piano I give to anyone who wants to start their children on learning music.
Oh,
Just take it, keep it till you want to upgrade to a better instrument, and then give it to the next person. So it's gone through like 7, 8 hands. And right now, just a few days ago, it went to another friend of mine who moved from Bombay to Delhi. She sent me a text, where can I rent a piano from? My son needs something to practice on. I said, take it. Just when you feel that you're willing to invest in a high quality instrument, do that. In the meantime, this is yours. Then for performances, I bought an M Audio Pro Keys 88. And if I'm not mistaken, that came in through Singapore. It came in quite cheap, but it was a nice instrument, very light action. And I had a laptop with some nice piano banks running on it, so I used it as a MIDI trigger for that. Oh man, then I got my first upright piano. This was another second-hand purchase from a family in New Friends Colony, and it had a cracked soundboard. So we got that repaired, and I again got for, I think, 40K.
okay.
And yeah, lovely piano. That's the one that is right now in Dirty Apron.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
remember, and just about a year later, my piano teacher told me, Mr. John Raphael, who I adore and I love, unfortunately passed away a few years ago. I was with him for 18 years. He is my mentor. He is my role model of a human being. And he one day I go to class and he told me, oh, German embassy is selling a grand piano. And I you know. And I called up my father, who's a HOD of exports with Maruti, and his office was in KG Marg, Kasturba Gandhi Marg. Later shifted to Vasant Kunj. But and right next to his office was the Maxwell Bhavan, which is actually the organization
Yeah,
selling the
yeah.
piano.
Can you actually
So
just
I said,
repeat
Dad,
what
we'll
what?
do.
Yeah, no, it was. I think the connection got just like cut for that, just that one
Yeah,
second. But yeah.
Steinway Model C,
Oh,
Hamburg built,
wow.
1967.
Oh,
Concert
wow.
grand, 7.5 foot. Yeah, I mean
Amazing.
retails for like a couple of €100,000. So just an insane machine, instrument.
Yeah.
So my father popped across in his lunch break to the Maxilla Bhavan, and at that time the director of the Bhavan was Dr. Stefan Dreher.
Yeah.
So they had a
Amazing.
conversation, and Dr. Dreher gave him the reserve price of the piano, which was just like significantly cheaper than uh, entry level car. Let me put it that way. It was very cheap, man. Like honestly, like 1 or 2% of the actual value of that piano. So, but because it was completely like it was destroyed, and
Done. Yeah.
uh, the Steinway's quotation to restore it was insane because flying it back to the factory, repairing it, shipping it back.
Yeah.
So we found out where it was stored from the Bhavan. It was in a warehouse in Punjabi Bagh. So Dad and I made a full plan out of it because KFC had also just opened in Punjabi Bagh recently. The first KFC. So we went into a car. We went to the warehouse, saw the piano. The exterior of the piano was in great condition. Action didn't work, like it was messed up. I'm 21 years old. Dad turned to me and said, "Kya karna hai?" And this is why I'm immensely grateful for the faith that my folks have in me. I don't know where it comes from, but I'm glad it does. I said, "Let's get it. I'll fix it." Like I've never opened a piano before this in my life. I said, "I'll fix it."
Amazing. Okay.
He didn't ask me again. He didn't ask me again. And that time even a couple of lakhs was a lot of money, right? It's not.
Of course. Yeah.
So he quickly organized the money. He bought the piano. Also on the way back from the warehouse, we bought a couple of buckets of KFC for me, my brother, and my father, because my mom and my grandma are vegetarian. And that really pissed off my father eventually because it started stinking in the car. So we had to move the food to the dicky. Anyway, so we get back, picks up the piano. We were too scared to tell my mom that we bought a grand piano. Because then she would say, okay, out of the three of you, only two can stay in the house.
Yeah. I
Um,
completely understand that.
so, one of my father's friends had just built his office, in fact, very close to the piano man in Sabdajan on Africa Avenue. So we requested him, and he had an empty room. So we moved the piano there. When I started going there, my piano teacher gave me a book on how to restore pianos. I went through it. And that's actually one of the reasons why I've been able to do a lot of weird things in life, is because I can digest technical data very quickly. Went through the book, I opened up the piano, figured out what the problem was, wrote a mail to the Steinway factory, and like this long ass, like, if you printed it out, it would be like 5 or 6 pages. I'm like, I'm 21 years old. It's my dream to own a Steinway piano. And it really was. I had made a bucket list when I was 16, 17
Wow.
years old. And the top two items on my bucket list were a Steinway piano and a Bosendorfer piano. And I have both now. So, yeah. And after that, I abandoned the bucket list and I changed it from bucket list of materials to a bucket list of skills. So I love learning things, right? So now I've got my tap shoes lying here for the last 10 years. I have to learn tap dancing at some point. Just a whole bunch of things. So, I opened up the piano, figured out what I thought was the problem. I wrote this long ass email. And, one of the head technicians at the Steinway factory in Hamburg, Hartwig Karl, after a week or two, he just replied with like a very, how can I help? Like, simple. And I was just like, holy shit. So I told him what the issue was and what I felt the problem was. And the jacks and the hammers were, so first the problem was the jacks were completely gone. They were almost dissolved. The wood was ruined and the springs were rusted and ineffective. And Mr. Karl took my address. He said, "What's your address?" And then I heard nothing from him for 2 weeks. And I'm sending a reminder, "Sir, what can I do? Please guide me." And suddenly a package of a sample jack arrives at home free of cost. Like he
That's
ships it all
amazing.
the way from the US. So not US, from Germany, from Hamburg. And I put in the jack and I said, well, sir, the key repetition seems to be working, but the hammer is now misaligned. There's a roller on the hammer which the jack sort of pushes up. And somebody had actually put the wrong hammers and the wrong jacks on the piano while trying to restore it in the past. Again, no reply for 2 weeks. Again, a hammer just arrived, like a jack. A hammer arrives,
Yeah.
and I screw it back in and connect it, and I'm like, oh, now the key actually works like it's supposed to. And so we went back and forth like this, and he kept shipping me sample parts. The first hammer he sent me was actually still incorrect. The second hammer, because that production model had two different sizes of actions.
Ah.
So it was super interesting for me because also in that process, I sort of really had to learn the mechanics of the piano. And I'll tell you where that came in use recently. But anyway, this happened. Eventually, and then he gave me like a massive discount on buying a full set of jacks and voiced hammers. So we got those in. We sort of installed them on the piano, and then we had to regulate it, for which Ajay Mistry came from Bombay. That's when I met him. But there are some things that you need hard piece of eye. Just reading from a book can't.
Of course.
Do it. But it was just a gorgeous experience that lasted a little over a year. The process of restoring the piano, and I still remember when the piano had to be shifted home. 2-3 things had to be done. The upright that was already at home, that the one that I told you about, it's an Automeister. It's a Chinese upright with a German sounding name, but lovely sound. That had to be moved out of the house for no reason, because an upright is in no comparison to the size of a grand piano, but that just had to be done, right? And then and I told Bomb, this piano is going somewhere, and I'm just replacing it with another piano. Like, she had no idea something 10 times the volume is coming in. So the grand piano comes in one leg at a time, and my father very nicely buggered off to a tour in, I think he was in Dubai or something, for some work with Maruti. He's like, Arjun, when I leave, then you get the piano in. Your mom's gonna kill me. So I'm coming in one leg of the piano, second leg of the piano. Mom's like, "Ye ho kya raha hai?" And we've cleared this massive area in the living room, like half the living room, And she's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "Don't worry, just see, just wait." It was a huge surprise, but like
3 days later,
when she heard it, she was okay with it. And that upright piano had a very interesting experience. A friend of mine wanted to sort of borrow it, and he lived on top in Khan Market. I think that flat of his now is turned into some restaurant. So we got there with the piano, took it off the truck, and put it in that inner circle of Khan Market to go up. And we carried it up the stairs, and we realized there's no possible way to, because those tiny stairs, and 90-degree turns. So eventually you had to bring it back and keep it in the middle of Khan Market. So I literally sat there for an hour waiting for the truck to come back, and I paid.
Amazing.
Randomly in the middle of Khan Market. It was quite a fun memory. Anyway, so that's the story behind the Steinway. And I got it kind of back in order just before Herbie Hancock visited India, the first time in 2007.
Yeah.
And I got a call from the American embassy saying that, we've heard from the Maxwell Bhavan that you've taken this piano. And is it playable? I said, yeah, I finished restoring it. And so they actually hired it for Herbie, and I got to hang out with Herbie and Wayne Shorter, which is just like, damn. And after I got in touch with the team at the American Embassy, they were really kind to me. They told me about the scholarship that was coming up, and they asked me to apply for it. I did, and I got it. So I went for this, program called NUFAX, Northeastern University Fusion Arts Exchange. And it was kind of an eye-opening program because, I suddenly realized how insignificant I am in the world of music. When you start actually meeting people who know their shit. And I also understood, where your sort of vision should be. And it shouldn't be about getting here or getting here. It should just be about growing and learning. And, it changed my mindset quite significantly. It was a beautiful experience. So coming back to the pianos, I'm sorry, it's a long. I warned you this is going to be.
I'm happy. Yeah. Please.
Then when I opened my cafe in Vasant Vihar, there was another friend of my father's who had just come back from London, and he had a Yamaha upright which we rented from him, and he gave it us again, like friend of my father's, gave us a very sweet sort of this thing that whenever you want to buy it, you can just deduct the rental amount and buy it, and the purchase price was also quite cheap. So in about a couple of months, then we ended up purchasing it. because we realized that it required a lot of work to be done. And I said, if I'm going to open it up and do the work, then I'd rather just own the piano.
Yeah.
And then Ajay had come to Delhi, so he helped me. He taught me some more things about, working on the action. And I've learned a lot from Ajay Mistry over the years, shaping hammers, voicing hammers, working on and the critical thing is that there are two parts of the piano. If you look at it very bluntly, there's there's the solid construction, the things that are the frame, the body, the pin block, the soundboard. These are major things. If something goes wrong here, you have to take apart the piano.
Everything, yeah.
Then there's the action, just the mechanics of it, that control the hammer, which is the eventual thing that has to hit the string, right? It's a percussive string instrument in some ways.
Yeah.
And that part of it is something, the work is much more nuanced and much more complicated often. But it's something that, you can just dismantle and remove and do it yourself. And in that action, there are hundreds and hundreds of little things, like a complicated machine that have to be sort of understood. And every time I meet Ajay, I learn a little more. And the story about, the opening of piano coming in the middle of a concert, there was a Polish band, I think, playing in our Gurgaon club in winter last year, and hit a power octave on an E, so the E1, so E2, E3, and I think the E3, which is a fairly significant key for the keyboard, broke internally. So in the middle of the show, I had to take apart the piano. We had construction going on our terrace. We got wood glue from the carpenters and actually found a little part of the repetition which had broken, repaired it, let it set for 15 minutes, and the concert went on normally. So, it's really cool how, let's just say that, that engineering bent of mind, efficient solutions, it really helps, man. So no panic, nothing. We took a 15-minute break, fixed it, and went on. Anyway, so the Yamaha piano we picked up, again, all my pianos are secondhand. I don't have a single new piano. Then a couple of years later, around the same 2-3 months in that time frame, first the Delhi School of Music was getting rid of all the pianos that were not. Sorry, I was getting a call.
Yeah, no
that
problem.
were in a bad state, and I've been going there for like 18 years, and at that time they had a French director, Philippe Engel, and one day I go to the school, and they had these two. They had a Grotrian Steinweg and a Bosendorfer in the main concert hall, and I go there, and the Grotrian was missing, and I'm like, where is the Grotrian? Like, I've seen those pianos my entire sort of adolescence and early adulthood. And I love those pianos, and they were in a terrible condition, but I love those pianos. And apparently somebody bought the Grotrian, and I went to Philippe and I had become like friends, bonding over the frustration of Indian bureaucracy and the genuine love for music. He's a wonderful guy, a phenomenal pianist. One of the most, that's the thing, he doesn't perform, but that guy would be one of the most incredible classical pianists in the country today. So we sat down, and he's like, the board has taken a decision to liquidate these pianos. And these pianos included like three small concert grands and the Bosendorfer, which was an imperial grand, which is just like, oh my God, something that I could never even imagine possessing. And then he told me the reserve price for all the pianos. I said, hold my pen. I ran home, I picked up my checkbook, and I ran back. And I bought all of them on the spot.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yeah, because I mean, I can't even tell you how much I got them for, because it's just, I mean, steel is not the word for it. But yeah, all of them required massive amounts of lakhs and lakhs of work to restore each of them. And years of work. So the Bechstein, which is now in the Gurgaon venue, which is one of the pianos I bought, took a little over 2 years to restore, and several lakhs over the span of 2 years. So it's not like, I mean, a lot of work has to go into it, but at the same time, like if you're willing to put in the time and the work, then you save much more money. Yeah.
No, but it's
so
also
the Bechstein
lovely
is in Gurgaon.
it's just so lovely to see that all of these pianos who have been part of, like, say, Delhi School of Music, and so many
Yeah.
pianists
There's
across
so
the
much
city have
history.
learned on, and they are now culturally making it, making the music go further through the same instruments in these spaces is just amazing. Like, it's like a full cycle at some level in the life of the
Yeah,
instrument.
yeah. You're absolutely right. The Bechstein had to undergo a full refurb. It was in a really bad condition. The next piano that we were working on, I don't know what the condition. I haven't spoken to Ajay for like 6 months. But there's the Leicester Grand. That's another 6.5. That's the piano that I learned on when I was at Delhi School of Music, because I was in the principal's office, my teacher's office, Johnny Sir's office. So I'm really excited to see that one get ready. And then we'll start working. There was an Austrian brand which had a completely different style of action, and that company's been out of existence for like almost 80, 90 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
that we couldn't restore. We couldn't figure out how to restore that. So I'm converting that into an art piece. And so the Leicester, and then the Bosendorf, the Imperial Bosendorf or Conguin, that'll take a couple of years. It'll cost a lot of money. So I've asked him to hold the work on that because I can't afford it right now. But hopefully we'll start work on that soon. And that piano, I don't know where to put it yet, but that piano, oh my God. Imperial Bosendorf now. And then during this time when I bought these pianos, which has now been like 5-6 years, I got a call from this Russian guy. Hey, I got your number, and I've been told that you like to buy instruments, and I have oh my God, I just gone blank. The instrument that predates a piano, yeah. Shit, what's wrong with my brain? Harpsichord. I've got a harpsichord for sale.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened. Yeah, I'm also getting messages from my team constantly. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. I was like, where is it? He said Vasant Kunj, and I'm like 10 minutes away from there. So I said, I'm gonna see you in 10 minutes, and I just hopped across. And I saw it, and beautiful thing. Again, the action was completely destroyed. Needed a lot of work. But I sort of went over, and I quickly, while talking to him, I Googled it, and I saw the actual value of that is quite a bit, a couple of €1,000. So I was like, "Ye to bas ke bahar hai. Like, I can't afford this 6,000-7,000 euro thing." And I just said, "Hey man, how much would you want for it?" So he said, "Listen, I'm happy with the price that I paid for it a couple of years ago, and I got it for 27,000." And I thought, "Shit, 27,000 euros?" And he's like, 27,000 rupees. And I was like, "Cash or check?" So
that's amazing.
So I picked, yeah. So I just 15 minutes. I called up some guys. I got a Vikram organized. Those 3-wheeler Vikrams, 3-4 guys. Paid him the money, picked up the instrument. 15 minutes I was out of his house. I said, I don't want him to change his mind. He's a really lovely guy, but this is a great deal. And 20 minutes, like 45 minutes to an hour after I left my house, I was home with the harpsichord.
Maybe you should write an investment book on pianos and restoration and negotiation.
Oh man. There's I have never negotiated for any of these instruments because the values that were offered, I felt were fair. Yeah. I didn't think they were ridiculously cheap. Also, honestly, because the amount of time and work that goes into restoring them is not
after, yeah.
So it's years of work per instrument. So I think it's a fair deal for somebody, especially for somebody who understands that it's better to convert these instruments back into a usable space than turn them into junk. There's a lot of people I've seen with really destroyed instruments who want like fair market, full market value. Dekho ji, Google says this is worth 5 lakh rupees. Please give me 5 lakhs for it. And the thing is bloody like falling apart. So that makes those instruments don't go anywhere. But there are a lot of people who understand that that's not how things work. Like if you haven't taken care of the instrument, somebody else has to, and that is time and effort and money. So I've been lucky that people have contacted me over time. In fact, yesterday again I got a message. There's a piano for sale. So I'm going to. I know a bunch of my friends and people I know keep calling me asking about secondhand pianos. So I'll quickly have a look at it and recommend it to somebody. There are two upright pianos, by the way. No, one grand and one upright that have come to me this week. So just I'm going to have a look at them. And for me, like since I don't have the liquidity to buy anything right now, I'm happy to connect people, and I because I care about these instruments, I'll just make sure they're in the right condition, or I'll tell them what needs to be done, and then I connect the people and say, go ahead and this is what it's worth. Take it.
So
And this instrument, this is a organ. It's pretty cool. It's got like a little volume pedal and. This was a gift from a very, very dear friend of mine, Karan Khosla. So they bought this from Japan, I think,
wow.
And it was 110, and they popped it by plugging it into a 220. So they actually never used it because it popped the minute they got it, and it was lying for years with them. And then I told Karan, I saw it in his house, and I'm like, let me repair it for you. Like, let me fix it and put it back in your house because I can't see it in this condition. And he turned around and he turned around and he said, you know what, fix it and keep it. And I was just like, we actually argued about that for a while because it's too big of a thing to accept from someone, even somebody who's as dear to me as Karan. But he just like, I said, let me buy it off you. He said nothing. And he just like, and he told me he's going to send me a plaque with his name on it to put on this. He hasn't sent it yet. But it's still not repaired because most of the parts are not available. This is from the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. I've been trying to date it properly. So most of the parts are not available. I just managed to get this basic sound out. So I'm still trying to repair it. I've tried to contact, it's Yamaha Electron. I've tried to contact Yamaha. They're not very helpful.
No,
sorry,
okay.
Long-winded story.
I'm not going to keep you for too long because I can see you're getting a lot of work messages also. But just a couple of last questions. One, I have this curiosity vis-a-vis your general love for food, because I think it's already been brought up a couple of times today. But in general, also, I love the food that you guys have, and it really builds my curiosity as to how you have like a Korean bulgogi pizza as well as like Mexican. Like, where is that inspiration coming from? How did you curate that to start with? Also, you spoke about the KFC bucket and,
Akku's Burgers, man. Last night, oh my God. And I can't believe I'm saying this on an interview, but last night, so my girlfriend, my cousin and I started this thing earlier this year, that once every 10, 15 days, we would have a Akku's dinner. Like, Akku's Burgers?
Yeah.
Like, beautiful. Amazing. So last night, we haven't done this for 7 months. So this entire week, my cousin's been texting me, Akku's. And I can't get out of work because, just trying to get things back in action. So last night I was at Piano and Gurgaon. We ordered from Akku's, sneaked out the side, picked it up, plated it, and sat and ate it outside, in the patio. We sat and ate Akku's Burgers. But yeah, no. So food is food, man. Like, I'm rather my largesse will sort of prove my love for eating, and I eat everything. I love junk food. I love fine dining. I love very simple rustic flavors, and that's evolved over time. As I've been in the industry, I cannot take the credit for designing the menu. My team does that. Manoj, our partner chef, does that. We've had some consultants in the past as well who sort of contributed. But fortunately, over 10 years of being in the food industry and being very critical in general of everything in life, in terms of from a positive space, not from a toxic space, I've developed a decent palate. So at least from my perspective, I can tell if something works or doesn't work. And it's just a combination of, trusting my partner chef Manoj and my own sort of inputs.
Your father, you mentioned your father used to travel a lot and bring a lot of things home. Did he expose you to a lot of different kinds of cuisine in your childhood itself, or was that not?
Nobody would come back from South America with like stale meat.
No, but here it says like because one has traveled that much, one has experienced and tried certain kinds of food. So when you come back, you can
Yes,
maybe go experiment in a
yeah.
restaurant.
My father has a very global palate because of that. But what we got was exposure to the culture. So
Right.
obviously, with the culture come expectations, but not the food, like
Yeah.
specifically. But that happened later when I started traveling. A little bit here and there. I haven't traveled too much in life, but a little bit here and there. I've always loved to explore the plate. And I had my one and only meal in a Michelin one-star restaurant in 2018 in Boston. And man, holy shit! Like the food was just unfreaking believable. One of my very close friends from school lives in Boston. I was staying with him for a few days, and he said, "Man, I got to take you to this place."
Too
Just
good.
yeah. So in terms of the food, like right now we are in a kind of survival mode, so we are not experimenting right now. We've sort of boiled it down to a small menu of sort of very popular things from our menu. And we're also working with very small teams. But once we are back in action, it's a constant process of, okay, a combination of things that work, which people like, and a combination of, again, artistry in the kitchen. So I want, like, Manoj and his team to have the flexibility to do what they want. Same thing with my bar team. I keep pushing them, and it's led by a gentleman named Deepak, and I keep pushing them. Come up with some, just like whatever you want. Just always create, because otherwise it also becomes a very stagnant job. Especially for somebody who's competent. If you're competent at what you do, you'll want to create. If you're incompetent at what you do, then you'll be happy to repeat.
Stay where you are. Exactly. So
fortunately our guys are competent. So
so also a lot of the bands now in the indie scene that have become big started off, playing small gigs at the Safdarjung place, and so now that has become a culture where up and coming indie artists want to perform at Piano Man, and I'm sure you get hundreds of texts saying that, listen, I would like to play, what can I do, this is my audition, this, that, and the other. So what is your suggestion to someone who is starting out like that, and how should they approach? Of course, so for example, I had heard in one of your interviews that going back to the very beginning, you started learning with someone who was not, he was a great teacher, but he was not like your Delhi School of Music, course where they taught you, the technicalities and everything properly, and you got some kind of cyst in your hand.
Well, No, so I credit my education not to, because I never followed the grades and the Delhi school system. I followed a teacher. I followed John Raphael.
Of course.
And correct. Before that, I had teachers who didn't really impart the right education that put me in the right sort of growth mentality. Fortunately, I was very hungry to learn. So it's a very pertinent question, and it always comes down to we get a lot of people writing. Even right now, a lot of people are sort of writing into us. Right now, we are also limited a little bit in what we can do, in terms of sort of opening up the stage. But our policy remains the same. Internally, we have a small team. We review everyone who writes to us. We go through the music. We try to make sure that we go through it within a week of it coming in, and usually that has happened. Once in a while, a mail gets missed here and there, which I reprimand my team for quite often if that happens. But the idea is, at the end of the day, like, be open and respectful to everyone who writes in. But at the same time, like, a lot of people that are writing in are great musicians, and then we sort of work out how to work them into our calendar. A lot of people who are writing in are also sometimes, playing sort of commercial Hindi music, which we don't host, or sort of Qawwali Sufi music, which we don't host. So we tell them. In fact, in this week, I've had about 8-10 Qawwali Sufi bands writing to me, who have very polite conversations. We don't, but but I still listen to the music, and I still sort of give my feedback on the music. Thank you, enjoyed it, didn't enjoy it. The third category is where we actually struggle a little bit, because not everyone is open to criticism. So if somebody writes to us and we feel that they need more work, and that's okay. It's okay to be in a position where you have to put in more work. But not everyone thinks that. Like, you've seen American Idol, right?
Yeah.
somebody will do something and be like, hey, I'm the best in the world. And you're like, hey, man, please understand the reality of the situation. Open yourself up to the world. So there are there are two types of people that write to us. One are people that, they'll come across to the club and say hi, or they'll send me a personal message saying hi on Facebook and all. And they'll say, we're sending you something. Please let us know what you think about it. And I'll often reply saying, listen, before I listen to it, do you mean that? Like, do you mean that I should be positively critical about it? Okay? Because I don't want a situation where, I come back to you and I say, hey, man, you need to work on this. Because, for example, you could be a great singer and accompanying yourself and playing some really bad guitar. Or, you could be somebody who's having a difficult time sort of figuring out pitch, or there could be some. So if I come back to you and give you a critical advice, are you going to say, fuck you, who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
Or are you going to say, thank you, let me work on that, or are you going to say that, okay, let me go back and figure out if what you're saying is right or wrong? And that's okay as well, right? I'm not the end all of be all of anything, man. And as a musician, my knowledge base is also limited to what I know. Okay, it's relative to my experiences, it's relative to my education. So there are a lot of people who I feel like I can have an open conversation with, and positive and constructive sort of feedback. And I try, especially with young kids, guys like Praptoj and Bhavya and all who've been playing with us since the beginning. I forcefully then sort of encompass them, and I say, okay, man, like for 4 years I must have told Praptoj, sing lower. He's singing these super high keys, and I can hear him straining his voice. And then 2 weeks ago he's playing at the club, and he starts with this really beautiful baritone, and I'm like, holy shit! Like I just cried, because again, there's some experience, like there's some musical education behind what I know, and there's the experience of listening to fucking 3,000 bands in the last 5 years. Yeah. So there's a little bit that sometimes I can possibly add to somebody's interpretation of the music. So yes, it's that situation where people are not receptive to critical feedback. It becomes very tricky, and we've had situations where we've replied saying that, hey man, we don't think you're ready for the stage, and somebody gets super aggressive. They're like, who the hell do you think you are? And this person played and I'm better than them. And I said, well, it's not about comparisons. Art is not about who's better than whom. Art is, what are you trying to express, and have you put in the work to be able to express it? Do you have the technical tool set to express what you want to express properly?
Yeah.
Right. And at the end of the day, and I only use this as a last case when somebody gets super belligerent. Hey man, it's my venue and it's my decision.
Yeah.
If you don't agree with it, open a venue. Yeah, because I don't like to say that. I don't like to use that. That's not the purpose of a cultural establishment. But sometimes it just gets difficult. But that's very rare, honestly. More or less, it's a medium to positive space where people are receptive. We try to be. Our aim is to be always respectful and polite, even if we feel that somebody requires work. And respect the stage, man. Don't get on the stage if you're not, if you haven't done your homework.
Exactly. So, so finally, just what we discussed earlier, what you said actually, people who consume this kind of content and people who actually listen to this kind of music are people who are slightly informed about it, have spent some time over it, are well read, or have made the effort to know about these kind of things. And so in our magazine, when we write these articles and put out this kind of content, we also assume that the people who actually want to read this and want to consume articles on culture, actually, the only reason someone would want to read it is because they're actually interested in it. So do you have any message for that kind of our audience who's actually critically looking at some of these aspects of Indian culture and different aspects of the field of arts in itself? And we'll also in our on our website we also look at spaces and society as two different categories. So in which we talk about individuals and we talk about particular spaces like Piano Man or Alka and Connaught Place and places like that. So people who are interested in knowing about these things, anything you would like to say about them to them, and whatever you have coming up in the future, if you'd like to let us know about that.
So firstly, I'm grateful for every single person today who takes out the time to leave, because it's so easy now. And to you, the informed person, I say, bring a friend. You know, every individual person that you encourage to pay attention to the things around them. It doesn't always have to be just art or culture. Just to be sort of mentally present in the moment. 80% of the people will say, bugger off. 20% of the people will understand, appreciate, and become a part of me. So never be discouraged. That's what we do. Like 5 years on, I still love getting in front of the stage and inviting people to listen. That energy doesn't go, because I know that every day that I do this, there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4 new people who didn't give it that kind of attention, who are now giving it that attention. And out of those 5 people, 1 person will go home and do the research. Okay, Apple Music, let me put on this artist. Oh, I heard this guy today. Sort of figure out the playlist. And that means the world. You know, in one day it might be 1 or 2 or 3 people. In 5 years, it's thousands. So look at it that way. So every day you make the effort is a positive day for, you know, each one of us is contributing and doing our part. The more of us that do it. What is the other part of your question? Sorry,
I mean, whatever you have planned ahead for the space in general, and
okay. So the next 3 to 6 months. Yeah, the next 3 to 6 months for us are kind of.
Also, I'm sorry, I didn't bring this up because I'm so musically inclined myself, but also there is comedy and other things also happening. So, like we haven't discussed that at all. Yeah.
At night, it's music every day.
Yeah.
That's the messaging that we put out, right? Music every day. Except it's not every day right now because we're closed on Monday. We're trying to sort of economize our operational costs. We're active Tuesday to Sunday. And then we sort of, you know, it's also a cultural mandate, right? We want to do more. So theater, comedy, all sorts of performing arts. We're trying to figure out newer and different ways to engage with them. And because we've essentially built like world-class theaters, I hope to think that they're world-class theater. I mean, in my mind, they are. So, you know, we want to use the space to allow people to create a better quality, especially in Gurgaon. You know, the quality of production is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you know, we work with you know, I don't know if you know Yeshu Yuvraj.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his father is an incredible thespian. So he produced a few plays for us. Madhav Mehta and Kasturba, it's hilarious one-man show, which is like had us in splits. You know, we've done a couple of runs with them. In the Delhi club, I did a run with Nisa from Akshara. We did a couple of more and dialogue style productions. Comedy, you know, we started with in our Vasant Vihar place, by the way. We used to have comedy curated by yeah, so we had comedy curated
in Vasant Vihar by some, you know,
I'm so bad with names anyway, and because I have a lot of people like then Manik Mana came in, you know, then a lot of other people came in, you know. And the fun thing has been that a lot of the people who've been our hosts for comedy have also moved on to become like, you know, the guys who won that Comics Con on Amazon, Nishant Suri and Rahul Dua. So they were our hosts for like a year almost. And then they won Comics Con and became huge, but still grounded. Like whenever they meet me, they're, you know, fortunately, the ego is not one up, it's just the popularity. And they're lovely guys. Bassi was our host for a while, and now Bassi has become like cool.
Yeah.
So it's lovely to see, you know, how there's happening. A lot of other comics that have sort of been there as well. And now we've given the curation to Rohit Kaur, who used to curate for the Canvas Laughter Club.
Yeah.
He's a really, really, really sweet guy. Very, he cares about this industry, the comedy industry, and that's the kind of person we want to work with. So he's curating comedy for us. So right now he's waiting for me to reply for the last week. And I haven't because there's some stuff that I'm trying to figure out to happen. But yeah, so it is important. And I also, you know, I love the stage from all. I used to act a lot. Till 2010, I was on stage as an actor. You know, so I love the theater. So, you know, obviously, there's a little bit of selfishness that, you know, I drive towards things.
Of course,
Because
that is what keeps you like wanting to work more and more and add yourself into the thing. I guess that is the motivation.
But then there's also, that's why the team is also important. Like you need to have other voices so that you have new points. So and then we take decisions after. So you're talking about the last question you had asked was, what's the future of Piano Man?
I mean, what is next?
Do you have anything else?
Other than that, no. I think we're good.
Okay.
But I mean, I have lots of questions I can keep asking, but I don't want to like I wanted to ask you about some of the regular bands you've had and which ones are your like.
So please go ahead. I have another 30 minutes. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So this is one which is that since it began, which are some of the bands that used to play earlier, and which are some of your personal favorites? I know there are so many, so you will say so many, but which are some of your personal favorites? I won't ask you your favorite, but yeah.
Man, that's a very different question. It's a very different question. You know, there are memories that, like I said, I generally have a really bad memory for names and all, but I remember there's this one Japanese band, Yoshido Tokuda, and the drummer in that band was perhaps one of the most incredibly expressive musicians I've ever seen in my life. You know, reminded me of Pierre Fabre.
I've heard.
Famous
I'm not acquainted with the work that much, but I've heard some of the music. Yeah.
So Pierre Fabre came to play the jazz yatra in the mid 2000s, and then of all the random things that could happen on Earth, he actually played with us in a jam session like 2 years ago. So this the Japanese drummer, I think his name was I'm sorry, I'm really, really bad. You know, so instances like this we've had let me try to pull out from Brazil, Tulio Morao, Jim Porto, and a friend of mine, Mark, he wrote to me last year, fabulous bass player, and he came down with this Grammy-winning artist from Brazil, along with Angela. I remember Angela on drums, Frontera, so vividly, because she's this like tiny woman, like absolute sweetheart. Slightly difficult to communicate with because of the language barrier, but I mean, but not a problem as such. And she grew up learning how to play the drums on the streets of Brazil, right? So she had that raw, emotional approach to playing. So that was incredible. It's so difficult, man. Mono Swayze, all of who became such close friends over time, watching them here. Man, I can't do this. That's like, I literally have to go through every single band. We've had artists who've been so incredibly kind to us, International artists, I think we sometimes make the mistake of assuming that India is very far behind in the way it treats its artists. As I've interacted with so many insane musicians, I've started discovering that the world is broken. Like most musicians across the world deal with a lot of shit. So when they come here and, for us, the artist is God. Like, artist is king.
Yeah.
And we built our organization around that. Just to see them, it's insane how kind and communicative and appreciative that they are. And I'm honestly amazed every time, because I'm always under the impression that, पूरी दुनिया में ठीक है क्लब, सिर्फ यहाँ पर कुछ it's not true. So, we built some beautiful relationships. My father's actually much better at keeping relationships up. He sends out WhatsApp messages to most of the artists that have played with him. My God, I feel bad that I've taken specific names, because I've like just names flashing in my mind.
Just the ones that come
and
in.
I want to say them, but I know we'll be here for half an hour. Yeah. No, there's so many. Just example, let's say, from Austria, we had this band called Worry Later that they've come twice now to perform. Once is Triple Ace, once is Worry Later. And so I'll give you an example. They're managed by one of the musicians' sisters, Magdalene, and this is a person who writes to me almost every week, sending love and prosperity for Piano Man and the organization, and it's so touching. Like, she reaches out. She just the musicians firstly are some of the most incredible. They're like these super senior musicians who are sort of teaching at conservatories. But it's that kind of care and that kind of love, that we've been getting from all over the world. I take her name specifically because she writes like every week. It's like, are you guys okay? How can we help from across the world? And I'm just like, man, the fact that you send us your love is you don't know what it means. And we get this all the way from Argentina. We get this all the way from Mexico, Brazil, from the US. Also because the interviews that I've been doing with musicians, I've been sort of reviving some of the sort of older connects as well. And and when I reach out to them, I get such an unexpectedly beautiful response. Hey, how are you doing? It's beautiful.
I think
so,
at some level, artists
there's another friend
on stage, like.
No, but that's one thing. But like again, there's a degree of warmth that is beyond the transactional or professional.
No, not, but just the emotion of wanting to perform and talk about music and get back into, just in the musical space, I just feel like that is something.
No, but that's what I'm saying. No, so a lot of the warmth that's coming is just a human level warmth. It's not about the stage. It's not about performance. It's just that it's a human bond that develops because what we think is a very baseline of humanity that we need to offer our artist guests, whether Indian or international. Especially touring musicians seem to feel that that's above and beyond what is expected. It shouldn't be. It should be the norm.
Yeah.
Is my point. Like, I'm not trying to do anything that I think is exceptionally brilliant. I'm just trying to be a human being.
Yeah.
And the fact that that is considered to be an exceptional service is sad.
Yeah.
It should be the norm. Right?
So
at one point, it's helped me build these beautiful relationships. At the other end, it makes me sad that, such basic decency is turned into something exemplary.
Yeah. So, but on the other end of things, what are some of the craziest technical writers you've received? Some just general artist writers that you've got. You don't have to name them, but
technical writers don't bother me, man. So I'm very upfront and blunt about this. Mm-hmm. Like when people send me, and people obviously send us, like especially like the bigger touring bands and management will send us like crazy tech writers. I'm going to call them back and say, connect me with musicians. I've never had to bring in equipment from outside. We have good equipment. It's enough for anything. I'm very clear about that. Maybe, okay, for Jojo Mayer, we got a specific drum kit because our drum kits are really basic.
Of course.
For Chick Corea, we got a specific piano because it's fucking Chick Corea.
Yeah, okay. Of course. Yeah. I was speaking to the person who was doing sound that day. I don't remember who it was that day, but I was speaking to him and he said I was asking about the same question about how is this rider. So he said, man, just don't even ask me today. But at the end of the day, it's fucking Chick Corea.
No, super.
So he said.
No, but we didn't use anything from the rider. It's just there was a pair of C414s that they wanted, which I didn't have. I requested. In fact, I think Mukul sent me Ferrisweed. I think he sent me a pair of 214s or something. I don't recall. But eventually, he sent me a pair of 214s or 414s, whatever he had. Eventually, I just bought a pair of 414s that I never need to look for them again. For me, like all the gear should be in-house. Otherwise, my costs will spiral out of control. How do I run a club? So I've received absolutely terrifying tech riders.
That's what I was going to ask.
And
It's fine, even if you don't adhere to that, but what are just some of the craziest requests you've gotten? I'm just curious about just in general.
no, like crazy backlines, stacks of amps and stacks of something or the other, and like, crazy lighting control systems, and like, I'm just like, hey man, this is what I got. I promise it will service you beautifully.
But it's never been like,
And
I just want.
honestly, that's what whenever I have to.
No,
The biggest gripe we've always had has been guitarists. The guitarists have always been pissed with us for not having good amps. So we invested and we got good amps. So I've got a twin reverb in Gurgaon and I've got a blues tuner in Delhi.
Right.
So before that, we had the much more basic cubes, cube 20s and 40s, which also 99% of the gigs like do. But I understand the importance. As soon as I plugged in the same thing from a cube into a blues junior, different world.
Actually.
Yeah. So मैं अब कान पकड़ के guitarist को apologize करता हूँ.
And in general, when I don't know how to exactly put this, but what is, I mean, obviously as a professional, you will say that the customer is whatever the customer wants to do, they do. But what would be the ideal situation for you? Like,
but that's not what we do anyway, right?
No, in the sense that what would, like, if I tell you right now that which night was the most amazing night in the last 3 years, vis-a-vis a gig, I'm sure you
Chick Corea.
Wow, I'm so glad.
Chick Corea, man. Like, how do we? I mean, how do we compare anything? I mean, there've been incredible musicians.
Exactly. That's why I was
at par with the incredibleness of Chick Corea at the end of the day. Like, it's very difficult to subjectively state why this is better or that's better. There are there are pianists there's a German pianist, Jero Kerner, who is a revelation on the piano. Indian pianist, man, Ron Cha, Utsav Lal, Rhythm Bansal. When rhythm plays, I cry, man. Like, they're beautiful. So obviously, but there's a history that comes with Chick Corea. Yeah. There is an institution. There is a sound that he's created. So it's not just about how beautiful a musician he is. It's also about what he's done for the world of music.
Yeah.
So the night that he played at Piano Man carried that history with it.
Of course, yeah.
So it's very difficult to look. When people say, "Oh my God, Chick Corea," this is musically there are other incredible young musicians who are able to do what Chick Corea can do today.
Yeah.
But can they? But we forget that when people like Chick Corea, it's history, it's legacy that they bring with them, man. And you hear it, you see it on their face. Every line on its face contains the experiences that he has, had over the last 7 decades.
I mean, yeah, I can imagine. Like, it's quite amazing. That I don't think that night we left the club and we were telling each other that now if we have our kids, at least we can say something that I went and met Chick Corea. What have you done in life? Like I went and
I've been very lucky that way. My father used to take me because I love music, and he used to take me. So with Dad, I've met Jeremy Spencer, Fleetwood Mac, hung out with him. Hung out with Roger Waters. When Roger Waters played Bangalore, we just turned up. We went to the show, and the next day there was one hotel that had refused rooms. So Dad and I were like, "Yahi par hoega." And we just turned up there, and Roger Waters was sunbathing next to the pool, and his entire crew was there. We hung out with him for like 2 hours. So like my father is also very like, show ke baad, go and meet the artist. Like he's just walk in and go and meet the artist.
I've done so many.
And yeah. So when I for example in 2018 when I went to the States, it was the first time I actually went to a lot of clubs. I hung out with Karen Allison, I hung out with Roy Hargrove Jr. Like just went and said hi and had a conversation. It was amazing.
Like it's just the most amazing. Like I used to go for a lot of Hindustani classical concerts as a kid, And like I remember once Stick McKay had done a show at Modern School.
You'll have to give me 1 second. I'm
No,
going to plug in my phone charger.
Yeah, for sure.
No, it's the wire's not on. Doesn't matter. So I'm at 15% battery and it's declining at the rate of 1% every 2 minutes. Yeah, we should be okay.
Yeah. So Stick McKay had done these concerts. They do these concerts in Modern School, right? This entire series of Indian classical musicians. So I had gone
I'm
and
a
listened.
modern.
Oh, amazing! Yeah. So I went.
They also used to do them in my college in ITM.
So I went and listened to Hari Prasad Chaurasia ji, and after I was like, I had never heard of him before. I'll be honest, and I was, to be fair, I was 11 years old. You know, I was just going and sitting and listening to all of these, and like, to be fair, I had some idea because, you know, again, family of artists, so we would listen to a lot of classical music and Kumar Gandharv and Mansoor ji, and I learned the tabla myself. So Zakir ji is just my god, and you know, that's how I started listening to jazz through McLaughlin, and that after that I got into jazz. But
Zakir Hussain is also a sweetheart, man. I had a 2-hour conversation with him once.
Yeah, I've only met him a couple of times, but I was shivering those 2 times, so I couldn't really say anything much. But you know, like literally my first interaction with him, I was, I think, 8, and he asked me, how long have you been learning? So I said 4 years. So he said, guess how long I've been learning? I said, how long? He said 40 years. So at this point, I was just like, but why? And I actually, like an innocent child, I just asked, but why are you still learning? You're the best. So he's like, no. You have to remember, as a musician, you have to learn forever. You cannot ever stop learning. And yeah, like as a kid, it's such a normal thing. It's a very cliched thing to say to someone. But as a kid, and he was genuinely like of another planet for me. So like that just stuck with me to another extent. You know, so I completely understand that history and legacy thing that you're talking about. It really plays a big role in how those things influence you as a personal, in a personal way also. Because technically, yeah, there are people who can play as fast or as the same things that he's played. But the thing he did for Indian classical music or fusion music or rhythm in general, you know, is just it's unbelievable. It's just beyond comprehension at some level.
That's the thing, you know, a lot of people, I always find people who don't understand this point say, oh, so what, but this guy can do that. And I'm like, great, I will respect this guy who can do that as well. But man, don't take away somebody's things.
Yeah, right. Like, and also because it's not just a legacy born out. It's not like, with all due respect to it, it's not like Gangnam Style, you know. It's not like it just became popular on YouTube one day and just blew up. It is something that is organic.
There's nothing wrong with that either. Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's a very different kind of legacy that it's created, which is historically entrenched in a way that will last for generations, whether it's even just 10, 15 people who are listening to that kind of music in the world, right? And that is the beauty of it at some level, is what I feel. But so with these online sessions you're having, what are some of the biggest logistical hassles? And just as an audience, what is like, I was asked this question once. We wanted to do like a small series of musicians coming and performing and doing things. But we were asked this, that why shouldn't I just go to YouTube and listen to a proper recording of them rather than come on a Zoom call and listen to that and then have like audio apps and all of those. Yeah. So what are those challenges that one faces when one tries to curate events like this? And
if you notice that we mostly do interviews, and the concerts we've done, we make sure that there's excellent internet connectivity and excellent equipment on the other end to actually get good quality. But I completely agree with the chain of thought that if you don't have a very solid and secure infrastructure, might as well listen to the same artist's existing recordings to high quality and, you know, get an opportunity to enjoy the music properly and then listen to the artist live. So that's why we haven't done too many live events, but we've done a few shows. which is absolutely fab because the artists actually put in the effort to ensure that they were streaming high quality.
Yeah. And in general, what is the, I wouldn't say way forward, but you know, I feel like the whole attitude towards all of this music and art and everything has changed now because of the coronavirus. Like you said, things that were being taken for granted, say in a live show, are now being taken for granted less. But you said the audience is still the people who actually really want to come and listen to this kind of music. And because they are starving.
Because right now it will be that because.
Yeah, no. So that's
right now also to understand that people's action is governed by fear.
Yeah.
So there are people scared of going out. So.
No, that is right. My question was a larger question that, you know, sometimes these spaces get categorized. This is not the message you are trying to put out, but this is how it gets categorized, that it's for elite people or it is only for a certain strata of society to go and listen to. So how can that gap be bridged? That it's not like only snooty people go and listen to jazz, you know?
Man, I don't know how. I've been trying to bridge this gap with varying degrees of success over the years.
Yeah.
Just because we put in a lot of time and money building a beautiful environment, I've seen people themselves categorize it as, oh no, this is meant for like, this will be a very expensive place for like very sort of rich people. I'm like, have you actually come and tried it out and seen what it is? You know, and every day there are people I encounter who are like, oh, you know, we just came because you know, music सुनना था और कोई जगह नहीं थी, हम तो बड़े डर के आ रहे थे कि कैसी जगह होगी. But this is great because we are, I mean, honestly, man, I have no, you come in your chappals, you come in your chaddis, I don't give a shit. Right? I want people who care about what's happening. I don't, you know, you don't buy anything, I'm okay with that as well. Right? So it's a messaging that we constantly put up. I'm not going to build a not phenomenal space just to have people not consider it to be a new. You get my point? Like I'm not going to affect the quality of the infrastructure that I want to provide to artists just because people think यार ये इतना सुंदर बना है तो मतलब महंगी जगह होगी और गरीब जगह होगी. That's it's moronic. Okay, and just because we are building beautiful spaces, it doesn't mean that there's a limitation to who's welcome. Everyone's welcome. Yeah. And I love telling the story. The Mukesh, my parking guy in Sabdajan, he's also identified. He comes and checks concept music. If he likes it, he comes and listens to it also. For me, it's a point of pride that I've managed to get a guy who comes from not a very high exposure background. Yeah. To enjoy some of the music that plays in my club. And he's welcome as anybody else. So, you know, we've had situations where we've had CEOs of companies sitting next to, you know, 15-year-old struggling artists who are trying to figure out what they want to do in life, sitting next to, you know, it's you are irrelevant in front of the art, is my point. Yeah. Yeah. Just when you're here, just absorb the art. It doesn't matter who's on your left, who's on your right. Today it matters. Today there should be social distancing. But otherwise, you know, it doesn't really matter. The environment it should comprise of ideology and not.
In fact, one thing that really reflects that philosophy within Piano Man itself is the jam sessions that happen. So, like, if you could maybe talk.
I'm down to 8%.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll just keep this one, and then maybe you could just talk about what is planned next. But maybe talk about some of the more memorable sessions and how this came to be in general, and you know what's the idea and how. Like I'll be honest. Like when I came first time, I felt slightly conscious. Like Simon was telling me, come play. We'll have some fun. And I felt slightly conscious because I had just had the most amazing time of my life and seen an amazing group of talented musicians play. And now he's telling me to. So what is the idea behind it and how should people like get involved with it?
So when you're trying to become an artist, especially in the realm of jazz, education is critically important. But actually learning to interact with other musicians is really important. And that's what jam sessions globally are being used for, is to get people in. You need to have experienced, knowledgeable musicians who can push you. Yeah. And you need to, so the way this is how for the young artist who wants to start playing jazz, this is what I say. Prepare 1 or 2 songs.
Yeah.
Come for the jam session and tell whoever's leading the jam hi, I've come prepared with these 1 or 2 songs. When may I join? You will be invited.
Yeah.
You will be invited. And so many musicians, you've seen how that the jam session slowly has been expanding, And, there's a new vanguard of musicians coming out from it. And the old vanguard, when they started playing like rhythm, when he started his first show at Piano Man, still beautiful, but he was a baby. Like he just started playing jazz and Aditya on drums, Aditya Datta. And today they're two of the most terrific musicians in the country. They're phenomenal. The way they express and play is just, and they've been playing the jam session for 3 years, 3.5 years. And also the Gurnaal jam sessions. So you've got to put in the time, man. Like it doesn't happen if you're not willing to do that. And the jam sessions are they're a pure and pristine space for you to actually like be receptive and be communicative. You can learn so much. And don't be scared. Like it's okay to be scared, but push through the fear and play one song. Like come ready to play one song on your instrument or singing.
Yeah. So, and one more thing, vis-a-vis your legacy, do you want to be known as someone who is like a cultural linchpin in the space of curation and promotion of jazz and independent music, or would you like to be known more as an entrepreneur, even though they are overlapping at a very large level?
I honestly don't give a shit.
No, but legacy,
I
like
don't give a
since
shit.
we were talking about legacy.
I'm concerned of no. Dude, I'm 35. Let's not talk about legacy. Who the fuck am I today?
So no, that's what is the plan? Like how would you like to take your career forward, and what
plan
would you
is
like
to work.
Fair enough.
Plan is to work. Yeah. I'm at 5%. It might die anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't think in terms of legacy. I don't think it. For me, every day is okay. What am I doing today, and how can I improve it tomorrow? That's it.
No, that's I think the best attitude to have vis-a-vis these kind of spaces. But so yeah, if you have anything to tell us about what is planned next and what we can look forward to.
So the next 3 to 6 months are a tricky time period. So it's a combination of being very careful and ensuring that everyone around us is safe. At the same time, starting to put out some content. So it'll be unlike our programming in the past. We're repeating artists a little more often because there are fewer artists who are willing to come out of their houses, and we respect everyone's choice. A lot of my dear friends who are great musicians want to stay home for multiple reasons, and I tell them the same thing. I say, just call me whenever you're ready to come out. Until then, you do you, and I'll do me. So yeah, and after this period sort of passes, it will at some point. Then the idea is we're working on a couple of strategic partnerships that will help us open up the country even more. And the idea is that we're going to come back with a huge band. So we're trying to create logistical partnerships so that we can start getting in bands from all over the country weekly, as opposed to once. And hopefully the partnership should be in place in the next 2-3 months. That whenever 3 to 6 months is the time period that we're assuming for Corona. But whatever it is, whenever it goes, we'll be ready. We'll be ready to just explode and bring in whatever we can. At the same time, even now it's cautious, stay low, stay under the radar. We have very limited seating in our clubs. We're not messing around with these things. And it's just like, okay, a couple of people come in every day, enjoy. Our target is to try to reach a space over the next 2-3 weeks or a month where we are not burning money in. Because the last 7 months, we burnt a lot of money. 2 giant spaces, rents, EMIs, the costs add up. So we're trying to get to a place where we are not burning money. And once we get there, we're happy to stay there for 6 months. Because we don't have money to burn, so we're taking loans. And how much debt can you take? You can't take debt to pay debt, man. That's a debt trap.
That's the worst.
Very dangerous. And that's where we are. That's where most of the industry is right now. So, but we see, even now over the last month of running, we see that there is a bright future. So we're less worried today than we were.
I'm happy to hear that, at least personally, as a big fan of the space. And thank you so much for joining me today and having such a wonderful conversation. And I look forward to meeting you very, very soon in one of the spaces.
Hop in.
Absolutely.
Hop in. we'll do the shoulder tap thing.
Yeah. Done.
Yeah.
Right.
Take care, man. Stay safe and see you soon.
I hope everyone, all your friends and you are safe and medically and everything,
Yeah.
everything is good. And yeah, thank you. See you.
Bye, man. Cheers.
Bye.